video going here.
There you go.
There, how's that? So now
Perfect.
you guys can know for sure I'm not in Barbados or Haiti or anything like that. And sorry, I'm doing this on my phone. I've having some internet issues at home, so I thought I'd just run out to the truck and do it out here. Yeah, thanks, Jamie, for the invitation. I'm looking forward to the questions today. Sorry, I'm just heading out to south of the riding as soon as we're done here to have some discussions on some coal mines. So that's why I'm kind of getting ready to hit the road. But yeah, I'll kind of give you a quick update. I don't know when's the last time I had a chance to speak to the chamber as a whole, but I know Jamie and many of you on the call are aware of the Foothills Business Recovery Task Force that we started at the beginning of the pandemic. And the reason we started that, and thanks Jamie and Sarah and others who may be on the call for all your help with that, is I really want to see a baseline of where our businesses in the riding were, Okotoks and beyond, and where we could see some of the gaps that we needed to try and fill in terms of some of the assistance programs that were going to be coming out of the federal government side. Certainly working with our MLAs as well to leverage or work with those programs to see how we could be of the best assistance possible. Some of the stats from that first survey, and we've done 3 or 4 since then. We just have our new one that we'll be sending out to everybody this week. Were quite surprising, I have to admit, and maybe for those of you involved in the chamber on a daily basis, maybe not so surprising. But for us to see that the emergency business account, for example, the wage subsidy, they got really good promotion nationally and media wise, but we were seeing businesses in my riding 30% and under were actually able to access those programs for one reason or another. And the main reason that we saw was the emergency business account, for example, you had to have a business bank account. And many of our small business owners, farmers included, were using a personal bank account to run their business. So they wouldn't qualify for that program. So we really pushed through the summer and into the fall to address that. And we're seeing that change now. But that took a long time. The other part that I found was really disconcerting, I'll say, is only about 20 or 25% of the businesses that answered the survey had a business plan. So to me, that means that they didn't really understand where they stood on the best possible day, and certainly weren't prepared to deal with a pandemic. Not that any business has a pandemic as part of their business plan, but if you don't know your day-to-day operations and where you stand financially, that was disconcerting. So one of the focuses that we had as part of the Business Recovery Task Force was work with the ecosystems, business ecosystems throughout the riding to get businesses to work together, really introduce communities to other communities like Okotoks to Crow's Nest Pass, Pincher Creek to High River, Bragg Creek to Fort McLeod. Get these communities working together and try and share best practices, but also when we were talking about supporting local business, that didn't mean necessarily Calgary coming out here, but communities within my riding supporting one another as well. And we did see a lot of success with that over the summer, where businesses in the Crow's Nest Pass, for example, actually had a pretty decent summer. Pincher Creek the same, especially in the tourism sector, as we weren't getting the international travelers or travelers from around Canada necessarily, but those Okotokians, for example, who would normally be heading to Montana or Kookanusa, weren't able to cross the border. So they were spending their dollars here in the riding, which was, a bit of a silver lining to what certainly has been a very difficult year. For myself, I'll be sending out that new survey here this week for everyone to take a look. And it's, kind of a follow-up to see, as we've gone through a year of the pandemic, more or less, where everybody stands and what business programs have been working and what haven't. The rent subsidy one has probably been the biggest bugaboo, we'll say, when it was first introduced. Less than 10% of the money allocated to that program went out the door. It was just too confusing. The liability and onus was on the landowner, the landlord, we'll say, and not the business itself. So that has been tweaked, and we're seeing a little bit more uptake on that program, but still some work to be done there. On the COVID side itself, I was put on the health committee in September and October. So that has been pretty much my life over the last few months, is doing a lot of research on vaccines, on COVID, on viruses, on rapid testing technology, travel advisories, and those types of things. So it's been quite interesting for me because healthcare is not something I've had a ton of experience in, and this has been a great opportunity for me to be at the front lines of the COVID protocols and what the federal government has been doing. On the committee, we just finished a study on the mental health aspects of and the impact that's had on Canadians. I was honored to have Lisa Watts from Hubtown and Andrew Gustafson from Natural High present to the health committee and talk about the impact COVID has had on small business owners. If you haven't had a chance to see their testimony, it's on my Facebook page. Please take a look at it. It is quite sobering, and I know it's something all of you are experiencing as well. So now that we've done that, our next topic is going to be the vaccines. We'll be starting that on Monday. That will be over the next 4 to 6 weeks. We'll be studying the vaccines, distribution, access, side effects. How are we going to be able to manufacture it here in Canada? Long-term vision for vaccines and pandemics. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of months for sure, and certainly hopeful as vaccines start rolling out, we'll see things return a little bit more back to normal. Good to see the province make the decision today to have, or effective today to have hair salons and some of these relaxing of COVID restrictions, because certainly I want to see the lockdown end sooner rather than later. But that's a quick synopsis, Jamie. I don't want to take up too much time. I want to leave as much time as I can for questions, and certainly you have as much of my time as you need.
Yeah, wonderful. That was awesome. Thank you so much, John. And I know we're going to be covering, I think, a few different topics today. I was joking with Alex earlier, everything from pipelines to coal mines, probably. So I again really do appreciate your time, and I'm going to kick us off. I do have a question, and kind of in regards to the lockdown in general, and what it appears to be, and I could be wrong on this, so please correct me, but it appears like a lot of this stuff, as we head into the second part, the final part, I hope, of this pandemic. I mean, at first it was a lot of reactionary things that were happening because we didn't really see this coming. There was no map for this. People really didn't know how to navigate through COVID-19. I mean, now that we've been in this for the better part of a year, what is there anything that's being done that will help us not be so reactionary towards the next part of the pandemic? Like, is there things that are being done that we can look ahead to try to get around, if that makes sense? Alex, maybe help me out. That was part of your question, and I think I got it, but I want to make sure.
That's about right. That's what I'm wondering too, is just how we can have a more proactive strategy that doesn't hurt so many businesses, as opposed to always, being on the fly and getting locked down here and there and opening, but then locked down again.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, we started this off, and I think all of us as elected officials take responsibility for this, is the communication from the beginning of this pandemic has been awful. Mixed messages, changing daily, no consistency. And I think that's where a big part of the problem, where we've found ourselves at, where I know for myself, I'm spending as much time debunking conspiracy theories and having a fight. Do you wear a mask? Don't wear a mask, these types of things. So this has been a lot of playing catch up, Alex, in terms of trying to get Canadians, and certainly people in Foothills, to trust what they're hearing, because you're getting sometimes one message from the province and a different message from Theresa Tam, for example, or a different message from Dr. Hinshaw. I think the key to this, Alex, and I can't speak for the province. Again, they dictate the lockdown measures. But the key to this is three things: access to vaccines, getting those rolling out, which the province seems to be doing a very good job of doing. But they've got to get those vaccines from the federal government. But the other two things, and where we have really failed as a federal government, is access to rapid testing and access to home-based testing. Jurisdictions around the world are using home-based testing and rapid testing as a means to keep businesses open, keep kids in school, keep your economy moving, keep people able to travel. But for whatever reason, Canada has been extremely reluctant to approve many of these home-based and rapid testing technology. I don't know if you saw the article in the Toronto Star today that said we had tens of millions of rapid tests sitting in storehouses not being used. There's a Calgary company called ClearMe that has a rapid testing technology that's 98% accurate, that is being used in the United States and the United Kingdom since July, but has still not been approved by Health Canada. These types of things are unacceptable. And when we see our economy in the state that it's in, when there's technology available that we could be using to ensure that we minimize lockdowns and restrictions, I find to be utterly unacceptable. And we have been pushing on this for at least since August to start getting these things out. And the federal government did allocate 4 million rapid tests, but that is, literally a drop in the bucket. When you have a population of 37 million, you'll be taking a rapid test many times through a week. But this would be a way for us to minimize those, get kids back playing sports. I would love to go back playing hockey and those types of things, Alex. So I think that is the key, that when we head back to Ottawa on Monday, ask those questions. Why is this technology not, widely available to the provinces and the municipalities to keep businesses open?
Thanks, John. Yeah. I of course have more questions, but I'd love to open up to people that are on the call. Anything anyone wants to ask?
I do.
Awesome. Margot, go ahead. Yeah. Why don't you just, if John doesn't know you, why don't you just let everyone know who you are and what company you're with as well?
Okay. So my name is Margot Anderson, and I am the CEO of Prairie Wind Productions, and we do film. I'm an equine health expert, and I'm one of 3 diamond level practitioners in the world. So
oh, wow.
Right here in Alberta. And for since March, John, 3 days a week, I attended the Agriculture and Food Canada roundtables. I have dedicated, now we're down to twice a month, but I have dedicated all of my time to this. And as you know, the farmers there fought tooth and nail, first of all, to even be included in CEBA. And then second of all, to make it equal for everybody. And because out here in Okotoks, Community Futures is just like right there. You can touch them and they're everywhere. And they've got these Zoom meetings we can all participate in. So really going for the Rural Recovery Fund through them was a lot easier for a lot of us farmers, which is what we all did. Now, it took forever for CEBA to finally get all sorted out. That took like 6 or 7 months. But now they've increased CEBA to $60,000. But meanwhile, they haven't given the Rural Recovery Fund that extra $20,000. So we're wondering if you have a voice to that. Just so you know, I have written an urgent action request to Mary Ning. You'll get a copy. You can just read it and go,
Perfect.
oh, I answered that in a meeting. We can forget about that. But because I just would like to know, like, when is the money coming through to make it, because it all has to be equal. That's been my whole thing ever since I joined the roundtables, is that I'd like to see equality, not just some farmers get this and other farmers get that, because as you know, John, that's all that was available during the pandemic for farmers was loans.
Yeah, Margot, thanks for that information. I will have to follow up on that in terms of when that money will be available. I don't have that at the tip of my fingers, but Sarah seems to know that she does know when it may be available.
Bruce Campbell, shut your ears off. And if anybody leaks any of this information, I will never say anything on a call ever again. John, read between the lines and you can extrapolate. It would be really nice if one of the ministers made an announcement really soon so that we could act on what we already know.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Margot, I hope that helps.
Everyone, thank you.
Yeah, but you bring up a good point, and I think if anything, there's 2 things that the COVID pandemic has highlighted, which I hope Canadians are paying attention to. Number one is the essential role that farmers and farm families play in our economy. I know it's the first time in my lifetime I've ever gone to a grocery store and seen empty shelves, you know, no flour, no dry pasta, no yeast. So I'm hoping Canadians, especially in larger urban centers, have a much better understanding of where their food comes from, who does it, and why we do it. The second thing is it has highlighted the inability for farmers to access the existing business risk management programs, AgroStability, AgriInvest. So we did finish a study on Ag Committee before I was moved to Health in August. It is public now. I will make sure I share that around. We came up with a list of 21 recommendations to improve those programs. In my humble opinion, I think they need to be scrapped and start over. They are just simply are not bankable, they're not efficient, and they're not accessible. But if you have a chance to read them, Margot, I'd really appreciate your feedback on that too.
Well, absolutely. And like I said, I do attend the AAFC meetings, and I can always ask difficult questions there.
Sure. Thanks.
All right. Hey, thanks for that. That was fantastic. All right. Anyone else? Any questions? I've got a lot of people on the call, so I'm sure. Awkward.
This could be the easiest hot seat I've ever had to do.
Well, I do have another question if nobody doesn't.
Yeah, you go ahead, Margot. Go ahead. Yeah.
So John, this is more of a comment than anything. I also own an oil company called Burnpal Resources. So I am just saying, please lend your voice to the cancellation of the Keystone project and help us out here, because that's a very scary thing for all of us. So that's just a comment.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Margot. Certainly, I would like to say I was surprised with that that news that came out on Sunday night, or what day is it today? Monday night. But I'm not. You know, we kind of had hints that was going to happen. But absolutely, Margot, we will see us going as hard as we possibly can when we go back. I honestly not entirely sure what kind of weight that will have, and I think the overlying message to me that this sends is, you know, all this virtue signaling that we're doing is that, you know, Bill C-69, C-48, you know, canceling Northern Gateway, you know, canceling Energy East, all of this stuff was to send a message to world leaders that, you know, Canada, we're doing everything we can to appease the anti-oil activists. These activists will never take yes as an answer. They will always move the goalpost. Nothing we do will ever appease them, and we have to stop doing this. We are handicapping our own economy, and we do, you know, I'm not telling you anything that everyone on this call doesn't know, but we extract our resources at the highest human rights and environmental standards in the world. So it does not make any sense to me why we are wanting to phase out our energy sector to appease people that will never be appeased. And I'm hoping that these types of things will make Canadians realize that.
Well, I think one of the big parts is education, and there may be even someone in this room who doesn't know this, but it's not just like, there's so many byproducts of oil. Your zippers that hold up your pants are made from oil. The wrapping on the toilet paper is made of plastic. Plastic is a byproduct of oil. So maybe this is now the time we should start stocking toilet paper.
Right. Well, in your masks, your gloves, your gowns, everything that we've been going through with abandon through the COVID crisis is all petroleum products. So, yeah.
So, John, I have a question. I'm just going to go back to COVID for a moment. I'm from Saskatchewan originally. And I mean, the Saskatchewan.
Here.
Right. A good old Sasky boy. It's my 9th year in Alberta, which is hard to believe. But anyway, from Saskatchewan originally, my family and folks are still back there, of course. And I mean, their restrictions, everything that they've been dealing with is different. Every province has been different when it comes to COVID restrictions, lockdowns, all that kind of stuff. And it's been interesting as someone who's been paying attention to both Alberta and Saskatchewan. It's been interesting to navigate that, right? So I'm just curious to know if there's any sort of like federal component. I know the provinces are all able to initiate their own lockdowns or their own mandates, but is there any like cohesion that's going to happen moving forward coming down from the federal government to try to get everyone on the same page, or does it really just have to do with the number of cases per capita in each province?
Well, Jamie, it really comes down to provincial federal jurisdiction. Provinces have jurisdiction over health. So lockdowns and restrictions are completely the jurisdiction of the provinces. The only way the federal government can demand or get that cohesion is if they were to implement the Emergency Measures Act, which Prime Minister Trudeau has been extremely reluctant to do. I don't think we've had it since it was called the War Measures Act when Pierre Trudeau did it during the FLQ crisis. So that would be the only way that the federal government could impose, restrictions or lockdowns or, that consistency across the board. And I just don't see that as a likelihood, but I agree with you. One of the biggest frustrations this has been is just that inconsistency from one province to the next, even one municipality to the next. I'm supposed to fly back to Ottawa on Sunday, but I've gotten a message in my inbox saying I may have to, being requested or highly urged to quarantine for 14 days if I come to Ottawa or Ontario from out of province. So should I go? Should I not go? I don't know. So I completely sympathize with your question.
Yeah. Thanks. All righty. Anyone else? I know we got the Eagle here, so.
I always have 6,000 questions, and today is no exception.
Awesome.
So I'll just ask, I have two kind of questions in the immediate part here. A, are we getting any vaccines? What is going on with that debacle? And B, do you want to stare into your crystal ball for a sec? And there seems to be a rather large change coming south of the border tomorrow. And besides Keystone, what's that going to bring us?
Well, to answer your first question, I could back up a little bit, Sarah, and I would say if there's going to be something that the reckoning will come with the Liberal government is going to be vaccines. We knew this was going to be a huge issue back in June when Prime Minister Trudeau announced that they were putting our eggs in the basket of a Canada-China agreement to develop and produce a vaccine. Now, it was called the CanSino agreement. So after everything we've gone through with China, why in anyone's good common sense would you partner with communist China to develop and manufacture a vaccine? So of course, August hits, no vaccine. The agreement implodes. China's basically said, no, we're nowhere near, we're not going to have it. So then we had to start to scramble. We had to go to Pfizer. We had to go to AstraZeneca. We had to go to these other companies and say, hey, we don't have any agreements for vaccines. Can we jump on board? Of course, thankfully, they said yes, but that put us way down the line. People who had agreements signed months before us, of course, are getting those vaccines before us. My big question with that is when we came in last minute to sign these agreements to access these vaccines, did we sign away our right or license to manufacture those vaccines here in Canada? We have the capacity to do it at the University of Saskatchewan as well as in Montreal. But for some reason, we are not manufacturing the Pfizer or the AstraZeneca vaccine here in Canada. And again, you saw the report yesterday that the United States and the United Kingdom and the European Union are going to be getting their Pfizer vaccine before Canada. The provinces in Canada are running out. We don't know. We have, I think, between Pfizer and AstraZeneca, I think 30 million more doses coming. We don't know when that's going to be. So this has been a huge debacle on the Liberal government's side, right from the beginning on who they partnered with on this and how come we can't manufacture this here locally at home. So that answers your first question. I don't know when they'll be coming, but I would say the vast majority of Canadians will be vaccinated by the fall of 2021. But let's put that in comparison, Sarah, where just about every resident of the United States and the United Kingdom will be vaccinated by this spring. And that just shows you how far behind we are with a population of 37 million. This is unacceptable. It is wrong. And, not much we can do about it now, unfortunately, but it just shows you the mistakes that were made. Second, on my crystal ball, what's going to happen south of the border? Oh, man. Other than Keystone, I think there's a couple of things that we have to be watching out for. The first will be country of origin labeling, which Margot may be very familiar with as an agriculture, which was a huge problem for us as Albertans. It really puts an impact on us, our ability to export beef to the United States. We took that to the World Trade Organization 4 times, won it 4 times, and finally got it repealed in 2014. So we have to be very aware of that, and the Buy America policy. Although that was still by Trump, Biden is saying he's going to continue with that. So we could still see some tariffs on steel and aluminum. We still don't have a softwood lumber agreement. And any of you who have gone to Home Hardware or Home Depot to try and purchase lumber recently has seen prices, in some cases double and triple. So that could still be an ongoing problem. But Keystone would be certainly the number one issue, Sarah, I would see. But the new Canada USMCA is already ratified. Now our focus has to be on signing a trade agreement with the United Kingdom now that Brexit is done.
Wow. Thanks, John. That's awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
Question, Sarah. Yeah.
John,
Go ahead.
sorry, John, this is Dick Nichols. It seems to me, hi. It seems to me that, this whole issue of the Keystone Pipeline was a bet on the part of the provincial government, a $5 billion bet that Trump was going to win the election. Has there been any thought at the provincial or federal level of what was going to happen if Trump didn't win the election and the Keystone Pipeline is not only canceled by Biden, but canceled permanently by Biden? What are we going to do? Has there been thought about that?
I can't speak for the provincial government and their decision-making process. Certainly I've been in contact with my MLAs over the last couple of days to see where they're going. I don't think it was a bet that Trump was going to win. I think the idea was to invest, Alberta put in $1.7 billion into the construction, the Alberta portion of Keystone to get it moving. And the feeling was, if Biden sees the investment that Alberta has made, it would make it more difficult for him to cancel it. At the federal side, I haven't, I'm not exactly going to put my trust or bet my farm on Justin Trudeau, going all out to fight for Keystone XL. I just don't see that as all likelihood. This is going to come down to Alberta and Saskatchewan leading this charge, and we'll see what Premier Kenney and Premier Moe do.
And how long will the fight take place? And when do you say, like Margot was saying, if we don't have oil, we don't have zippers, we don't have cellophane to go around the top. I've been making that argument since the late 1970s, and it hasn't really registered anywhere. There has to come a point where we have to say, maybe this isn't going to work. And what are we going to do in that event? And, and people here in Alberta, people in Saskatchewan, and people in northeastern British Columbia are going to be very impacted by that. We have to start thinking about it sooner or later. And I don't see any evidence that we are.
Well, I think we are, Dick, but I think you make a great point. You've been fighting this fight since the 1970s. And I think what we overlook here in many cases is two things. The inability or the inexcusable decision for the oil and gas industry to not talk about what they do. For decades, they've just stuck their head in the sand and never worried about communications and never talked about their environmental standards or improvements in technology or innovation. And they have lost this narrative. And you're right. Like I said, there's almost nothing we can do to win this battle. And we're trying, I can tell you, trying with everything I have in Ottawa to talk to Liberal colleagues, Bloc Québécois colleagues, NDP colleagues about what the energy sector actually is and what we do. But oh man, the lack of knowledge, let's say, or understanding of what the energy sector actually is astonishing, that we have not educated our own residents in this country about what we do. And I'll give you a quick example. So last election, I brought I want to say close to a dozen Quebec conservative candidates who are running for us in Quebec, and I brought them to Alberta. A few of us did, and toured them around. And I had one that was running for us in Drummondville, Quebec. She worked for the CBC, actually, as a journalist, and she was conservative. Go figure. But I took her up to Leduc to go see the oil museum in Leduc. We're on Highway 2, on our way there, and she sees a pump jack on the side of the highway. And she said, "What's that?" And I said, "It's a pump jack." And kind of explaining what it does. And she said, "Can I go see it?" I said, "Sure." So we pulled off the side of the highway. This is in August, beautiful day. Kind of skipped over the fence, don't tell anybody, and showed it to her. And she goes, "Where's the oil?" And I said, "Well, it's underground, and it's being pumped into that storage tank, and then a truck will come, or it'll go by pipeline to Bruderheim or Hardisty or whatever." And she goes, no, where is the oil? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, "There's not any oil on the ground." And I said, "Well, there's never oil on the ground. It's underground. It's in a pipeline or in a tank." And she goes, "This is not what we are shown in Quebec. In Quebec, we are shown that there's oil running up and down the ditch and through the fields." And she said, "This isn't real. You set this up." And I said, "I will take you to any of the hundreds of pump jacks that you can see here, and they are all the same." So this is a well-educated, journalist from Quebec, from Montreal, that in her head, we are Nigeria, that oil is running up and down the ditches of Highway 2, and we are lighting lakes of fire, and this is in Canada. So this really threw a light bulb into me that we think that our message is resonating, and it's not. And we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And that's a true story, Dick, true story.
No, I've had stories like that too, so I know exactly what you mean. But at some point, I think we can't rely on the communications people. And I was, as you know, a communications person in the oil industry for a long time. We can't rely on the oil industry to make that case anymore. The people of Alberta and the people of Canada have to make that case to one another.
Well, and I think, to your point, I agree, because no one will believe the energy companies anymore. Like, they come out and say, we've reduced the carbon footprint of a barrel of oil by 50% in the last 20 years, which is true, but no one's going to believe them. I think, I'm no fan of Justin Trudeau, and that's not a secret, but we need him to take a leadership role and say, you know what, can we do better? Yes. Will we do better? Yes. However, as I've said, Canada develops its resources under the most stringent environmental standards, the most stringent human rights and labor code standards in the world. And he needs to be that champion. He has the support of the activists and the green movement. I honestly think he's the only one that can change the narrative of what we're dealing with. But will he do that? I highly doubt it.
Could he do that and still retain the support of the Greens and the activists, do you think?
I don't know if he needs them, and that's the astonishing thing here. Justin Trudeau's goal here is to bring the left parties under one banner, which is the Liberal banner, and he's well on his way to doing that. The NDP continues to be ineffective and non-existent, and the Green Party, just elected a new leader, and their polling numbers haven't moved 1 inch. Sure, maybe it'll cost him some votes, but sometimes he's got it. At some point in time, he's got to make a decision that's in the best interests of all of Canada, not just one voting bloc.
Does he need the education in that too, or does he actually have that knowledge at his hand?
Should have.
I would hope he has that knowledge at his hand. I think what he has done, though, is he's insulated himself with, very active green, green activists. Gerald Butts was the director of the World Wildlife Fund. He's got Marlo Reynolds was the director of the Pembina Institute. All of these people are his inner circle. So it's an echo chamber, right? It's tough for us who are pro energy or pro resource industry to get through that. And I can tell you, I've spoken about this in the House of Commons tens of thousands of times, I'm sure, and it is just not. It's not breaking through. There are some Liberal members of Parliament that understand why this is important, and they're with us, but it's not enough for us to make a difference yet. But we're not going to give up.
Well, John, can I just add one more fail to that, which is, this is like near and dear to my heart, and it's very important to me, is that, just for example, so starting with Trudeau not paying through Phoenix starting in 2016, 450,000 government employees, of which I was one of them, not getting paid by the federal government. And before that, we would have, big, huge United Way parties and contribute to the United Way and our food shelters and everything else. Well, after that started happening, it started with the charities in Calgary just crying like, what's going on? We don't have any money. We don't have any donations. And no one had attributed to the fact that the people that used to raise money and give the money were now using those food banks. I had a coworker who was using a shelter. She'd lost her home because she hadn't been paid. So her and her two kids were living in a shelter, still working for the government for no pay, but I don't know what that was about. But she is now accessing that. And here in Okotoks, we are very community orientated. Like, for example, Pamela Morgan has Baby It's Cold Outside. Yep. And what did we deliver? 208 people, and 108 of them were children or something like that. Lots of food, lots of presents, but she's just one organization. There's so many. There's the food bank. I can't list them all. There's so many. We're a very strong community. However, without the donations that we do get from engineering companies who are also part of oil companies, that's going to be, and we've already had that in Okotoks with the first big downfall that happened there prior to COVID, and lots of engineers losing their homes, etc. Without that, we're going to have a bigger problem looking after the people that we usually do. And when that happens, that's when our society is really going to break down, when we can no longer support the families that need us. And that is the foundation, of everything we do, is being able to help others. So.
Well said.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
On that note, where do you and the Conservatives and perhaps the federal government currently, what's the climate on some sort of universal wage?
Like a general universal basic income?
Yeah.
I know it's been bantied around for years. It's a strong, the NDP and the Green are really pushing for this. I know the Liberals have kind of talked about it a bit, but I'm not sure if they're going down that road quite yet, Sarah. I am vehemently opposed. Now, I'll put a caveat on it. I think a universal basic income could work on the if you get rid of every other program. If you get rid of employment insurance, you get rid of AISH, you get rid of all of these other social programs, I think you'd actually save probably billions of dollars, because you would be able to reduce the bureaucracy by a lot of red tape and people, for that matter. It would be easy to access, like, here it is, here you go. However, we all know how politics works. If on the off chance that it ever did happen, which I doubt it would, but you said, okay, we're going to get rid of all these other programs, we're going to put in a universal basic income, and don't ever come asking us for more. We know the lobby groups will start the second the next election is over, saying, well, there's this group that needs a little extra help. There's this group that needs a little extra help. All these programs will come back. So you'll still have all of these social programs, plus universal basic income, plus pharmacare, all of these things that the NDP and the Liberals want to put in. The universal basic income is simply unaffordable to add on top of what we're doing. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars. We've run, as far as we know, a $400 billion deficit through COVID. that is what, so that kind of gives you an idea what a universal basic income would cost every single year. It's simply not affordable to do. Not to mention, we've seen the impact that the CERB has had on the workforce and many businesses' inability to attract people back to work. So I think it would be a drain on our labor force and a massive drain on our finances.
May I address that a little bit in the fact that I think that what we've done is the way that we deal with the CRA and the way that we have it all set up for any of our taxation is what I'm trying to say. What office am I in? Anyway,
You're making me nervous, Dale.
I know, yeah. No, I need Brian here is what I need. Taxation, the whole taxation system needs total revamping. There's no question about that. And so to play devil's advocate, if you have that in a proper balance, then perhaps basic income would work.
Yeah, I would say, Dale, that has to be a priority coming out of COVID as well, is a massive rewrite of the taxation system. It is so, well, you guys deal with it. It's so complicated and so convoluted. That has to be a priority.
Mm-hmm.
One thing also, John, though, is I grew up in Australia for 2 years, and they have the dole, so every week they can collect so much money. And what's good about it is they can travel from Perth all the way to Sydney, all the way to Cape Tribulation, and around, and like every week collect that money. But what they can also do is, because my parents, while we were there, took in a homeless child. She was on the dole and she was allowed to go to university. She's got 3 masters now, and she's the CEO of a hospital in Adelaide. And so even if our unemployment, I know that's not what it's called now, but I'm so old. But our unemployment insurance, like people who are on it aren't allowed to go to school. And I've always found that to sound so ridiculous coming from Australia, living there for a couple of years, because if we would allow people to get an education and not these fluffy little courses like, oh, if you're on UIC, you can take a smart women business course. Nada. Those are the worst. Those are the worst. What you really want to do is say, okay, here, you can go and become a Red Seal chef at SAIT, or here you can take an IT program and become let them get an education. So and I'm not saying you have to have the, I don't know, was it $2,000 a month for
CERB? Yeah.
You don't even have to have that much, just so much weekly that they can, go to school, or like once someone is educated, the whole world opens up to them. And I understand, I still feel for the businesses that couldn't hire. Trust me, I've been there. And it's hard to get people to work when they've got a better choice, or different choice, sorry. But yeah, so I wouldn't rule it out if they kind of followed a model like Australia and let people get educated while they were on it, instead of saying, okay, here's money, but you can't go to school. You have to stay home and watch TV.
Yeah.
John, we have about 10 minutes left, and I got a question for you. I'm curious. I remember in the first kind of initial part of the FBRT, we had a lot of conversation about business disaster recovery on smaller scales, right? Like the High River flood or the Fort McMurray wildfires. And there was a lot of measurements that we were shown when it came to like creating a false economy, and then a lot of like disaster recovery, and how that actual disaster recovery process takes, I think it was anywhere, don't quote me on this, but from 2 to 5 years after a disaster before the community is sustainable, like, well, not sustainable, but before the community is out of that disaster phase again. I mean, this is obviously a massive event. Every community in the country is dealing with this. What does that look like? And I know that's maybe asking a lot, and looking you to look in your crystal ball a little bit for us, but like, are we looking at a 2 to 3 year recovery, or are we looking a lot longer? And should businesses be preparing for that?
I think we're looking at more like a 7 to 10 year recovery, Jamie. The difference between the wildfire and the flood is the water goes away, the fires are put out, and it's very definitive. When we can, start the rebuild process. With this, as we've seen over the last year, it's very spurts and stop and go, and it's very hard to predict. But in speaking with business owners over the last several months, a lot of them have said, because of lockdowns and reduced capacity, they've dipped into their savings and dipped into additional loans, and most of them have said it's going to take me 7 years minimum to build back that equity that I had in my business prior to COVID. And then more, on the larger scale, when you look at going into COVID as a country, we had about a $650 billion debt. Well, now we've surpassed 1.1 trillion. That is a huge number for a country our size. We are getting dangerously close to the credit crisis that we had in the mid 90s, where no one in the world would lend Canada money anymore because our credit was so bad. So how do we pay that back? There's going to be implications for businesses and Canadians, whether that's tax increases or cuts in services. We don't know. But any discussion about ever having a balanced budget in the near future has gone out the window, and any financial models that we have done as a Conservative Party looking towards the next election, we basically ripped it up and thrown it out and started over with new modeling that we had never experienced before. So I would say we're looking more as a business owner, you're looking more at 7 to 10 years. As a country, we're looking at 10 to 20, 25.
Ouch.
So no one sees that as acutely as I do. I would say I definitely see that on the daily, and these are terrifying times for us and small business owners. I get to be on the lucky end of that, but it's those conversations are really difficult.
Yeah.
I really hope that the words community futures are more recognized in Ottawa these days, and that the contributions we have made to the Canadian economy are recognized. I think in Alberta, we're going to be up to somewhere around $60 or $80 million doled out amongst us when we're done with this, which is a staggering number. I'm wondering though, as the Conservative Party, what are you guys doing to learn from this and put together an election strategy? Because there's so much finger wagging that goes on during, a stable government situation or these kind of times. And it seems like when we get out into an election, there's always this on your heels bit and sort of more finger wagging instead of proactiveness. And I don't say that just about the Conservative Party. It's fairly universal. So what are you guys doing to get ahead of this at this point?
Well, we have to, as a Conservative Party, show Canadians that we have a vision and a plan to get Canada back on track. We are going through that process right now, Sarah. I've been put in charge of the opioid crisis mental health working group. So that's my job right now, is to come up with policies, because there's no question, we haven't even talked about this, but the impact on the mental health of Canadians from this is severe and will be long lasting. We have seen, I don't know if you saw the Canadian mental health report that came out in December. 40% of Canadians feel their mental health has deteriorated. Substance abuse has gone up by 20%. 10% of Canadians have felt suicidal. These are sobering numbers, but no one is talking about a solution or how to address that. So that's my job right now that I've taken on over the last couple of months. So all of us have been split up, Sarah, and tasked with these jobs. And I will preface it with this, and I will say, I had some pretty heated arguments with the press gallery in Ottawa after the election in the fall of 2019. And not just as Conservatives, but as politics and as an election goes. Our first problem is Canadian media pays way more attention to what's going on in the United States than they do here in Canada. Just about every newscast leads off with Trump, and what they're going to do now without Trump, I don't know. So maybe we'll get a little bit more attention. But for some reason, that last election, I really paid attention to what CTV, CBC, Global, and this isn't a knock on CBC. This is everyone. They never talked about policy. They never talked about ideas that political parties were putting forward, not just us, but any of them. We had, for example, a climate change and environment plan, which I was extremely proud of, that we worked extremely hard on for more than a year. We got zero coverage of that, zero. And all they talked about was blackface, Andrew's insurance license, Trump this, and it was tabloid journalism. And I think that is doing a huge disservice to Canadians as they make their decision on who they're going to vote for. And an election is who has the platform that resonates the best with me. And it's hard to make that decision unless you sit down in front of your computer and you go through every political party's platform page by page. That is not leading off the National. It is not the front page of the Globe and Mail. And that is extremely unfortunate. And I hope we can change that as we come through COVID. I think Canadians should look at each political party with the blank slate and say, okay, I don't care what you've done in the past. What are you going to do to make sure that my kids are not paying, and my grandkids are not paying, and my great grandkids are not paying for this for the rest of their lives? And I have a business and or job that I can go back to, and I'm not going to lose my home. That's what the decision Canadians are going to have here in the next, 6 months, 2 months, we don't know.
Awesome. Well, not awesome, but thanks. Good answer. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, except for me, like you can still vote for me, but
yeah. Okay. Well, I have one more question, and I'm going to try to end on a positive note. So keep that in mind as you answer. But for me, like I was saying it before, it's my 9th year in Alberta. When I first moved to Alberta, it was like, everyone in Saskatchewan was like, you got to move out there. It's the Alberta advantage. It's the place to be, land of the, anyway, it just kind of feels like for the past few years, Alberta just keeps getting hit pretty hard, right? Like it just seems like we can't get a win when it comes to oil and gas, when it comes to economy, it's just everything. It just seems like, and then COVID, it just seems like one thing after the other. And just as we are about to kind of, crest that hill, something pushes us back down again. So do you see a win coming to us anytime soon? Because that would just be great right now. That's my question.
And you preface that by trying to finish on a positive note. So
yeah. So this better be, I need a positive answer, and can we get a win?
Yeah. I'm going to say yes. And that there's no question that it has been tough to be an Albertan. And I'm like you, Jamie. I moved to Alberta in 1992 with pretty much my entire graduated class from Yorkton Regional High School, who all still live in Okotoks or High River, Turner Valley, and Black Diamond, for the Alberta advantage. And my dad said, go to Alberta and never come back. There's nothing for you here. So I'm very happy he did. But he kind of jokes now. I'm asking if I'm going to come home. But we do have opportunities. And I would say, it is misinformation for people to say, well, Alberta, you're just oil and gas and that's all you are. Alberta has an extremely diversified economy. And I would look at agriculture as one where we do have an opportunity to have a huge impact on Canada post-COVID. My area had a fantastic harvest this year, especially after a very difficult year before. If you tour around the riding and you see, like the Foothills Tourism Association and the agribusinesses and the value-added projects that are happening, the solar farm that's out by Carmen Gay and Vulcan. These are things that are happening in Alberta. I more than anybody want Alberta to be the economic engine of our country again. And I think we can do it. But we have to look at ways of navigating through this, getting back up on our feet. And for sure, I think it's frustrating for Albertans when you sort of have, federal government working against you, Joe Biden working against you, in many ways, China working against us at some points in time. But if anything, I've learned in my now 30 years in Alberta, we are resilient, we are tough, we are entrepreneurs, we are risk takers, and we've been through this before. We've been through the National Energy Program, survived. We've been through these downturns before and survived, and not only survived, but thrived out of it. So yes, Jamie, I think there are wins coming. I would love to tell you exactly what it is so you can go and invest in that stock tomorrow. But I think it's, and an interesting thing that we haven't talked about either, which is the de-urbanization of Canada. And I don't know if you've seen those reports that people are kind of fleeing the cities as a result of high home prices, COVID, all of these things. If we can see that de-urbanization and see some of those head offices, people working from home continually at post-COVID, I think you'll see some really exciting things happen in some of our smaller communities. If we can get rural and high-speed internet to these communities, those types of things, have that infrastructure, I think there's some really great opportunities coming.
Yeah. See, now I'm going to have a great rest of my day. Positive note. So I do appreciate
That's good. That's good.
As always, John, we want to thank you so much for your time today. It is fantastic to be able to engage with you. As far as chamber stuff is concerned, we do have our AGM coming up tomorrow over Zoom at 11:30. So you can register for that on our website. If anyone on the call has not and you're interested, we're going to recap last year, have a few new directors joining us, which we're excited about, and then moving into 2021 and what that looks like for us. So it's going to be great. We'll definitely be, I'm sure, chatting with John again and having some more engagements with John and RJ, Mayor and Council. We continue to want to be your voice to and from local government is our goal. So thank you so much for your time today, John. We really do appreciate it, and all the best. Drive safe and good luck in Ottawa if you go.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jamie, and really a pleasure for me to be here, and thanks so much for the invitation. But I'm in the office in High River pretty much every day. That's one of the bonuses of COVID, is I'm home way more than I was before. So if there are any questions or anything I can help you with, please do not hesitate to reach out, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And we're always looking for your advice and your ideas as well. As Sarah, you talked about us building a policy for the next election. Is I'm leaning on you guys to help me do that. And what are some of the things that you need to see? So please reach out, and your feedback is welcome.
Wonderful.
Well, I'm glad you're not tired of us. Thanks, John.
Never.
John.
Thanks, you guys. Good to see you. Take care.
Right.
Enjoy your day.
Thanks, John.
All right.
Bye,
Bye now.
everybody.